Part 2. Into Action. The 3 core functions. The sales core function. The third core function of the language services provider is sales. Just as with our discussions about project management and vendor management, it is important to clarify here that we are discussing a function, not a role. The core functions of vendor management and project management can be performed by different people, but they are traditionally carried out by either dedicated vendor managers or project managers. The sales core function is by far the furthest reaching function in that it is carried out by the widest variety of people in an LSP. Sales is a function that happens or should happen at every single time a customer or potential customer interacts with, hears about, or talks about your company. Sales happens whenever a project manager delivers a file, somebody reads an email from your marketing team, or hears a speech at a conference from your CEO. Everybody in the company is responsible for sales. If a junior engineer does great work, the client is happy and will consider doing more business with the company. That is sales. If a vendor manager is able to quickly staff a new project through a complex strategic vendor management strategy, the client may go to a conference and tell colleagues at other companies about the great recruiting abilities of your company. That is sales. And of course, when an actual salesperson reaches out to prospective new clients to better understand what international challenges they are currently facing, that is sales too. For the sake of simplicity, though, in this section, we will be referring to the salesperson as the one responsible for carrying out many of these activities. As with project management, where there are many different people within the company who work together to manage a project, but the activities are coordinated by the project manager, it's the same for sales. While sales is carried out by many different people within an LSP, it is often ultimately the salesperson's responsibility to coordinate such activity in such a way that it leads to increased revenue for the company. There are many ways to approach sales. Airport bookstores around the globe are lousy with paperbacks touting advice and strategies on how to win more customers and grow your business. This is not one of those books. This is not a book about how to increase sales activity because that is not the book we wanted to write. We wanted to write a book about how to navigate the language services industry. Therefore, we will be skipping over a lot of sales theory so that we can focus better on the concepts that are either unique to or especially important in the language services industry. That having been said, it is important to note that for any LSP, an effective sales strategy is crucial in its long-term success as a profitable company. We have already discussed in our market influencer evaluation that the language services industry is a very small industry with a high degree of emphasis on brand equity. Your salespersons are your primary brand equity ambassadors. They have the power to greatly influence your reputation within the industry, for better or for worse. There is much to gain by having a successful sales strategy. This is why it is categorized, along with vendor management and project management, as one of the 3 core functions of the LSP. However good the vendor management and project management teams are, it won't matter if there are no customers for them to service. The sales team is the one responsible for bringing in those new clients and growing the revenue for the company. A competent, experienced, and well-connected salesperson is worth their weight in gold in the language services industry. An experienced salesperson will not only come with industry knowledge, but also a Rolodex full of connections to start working on day 1. This is not an area where you want to try to save some money by hiring inexperienced or unqualified salespersons. Hire the best and pay them well, for they are going to hold the keys to landing new clients and growing the business. We mentioned above that sales is a function and not a role, and therefore it can, in theory, be carried out by any team member in the organization. However, when it comes to new business, we would highly recommend that as soon as your company is making enough money to support it, you hire a full-time, experienced sales team. You will not be sorry. We have seen LSPs struggle with growth because they either do not or cannot maintain a good sales team. Usually, this is for one of 2 reasons. Either they do not want to pay the big bucks for top-performing salespersons, or the senior management doesn't fully respect the complexity and value of sales, thinking they can do it themselves. Technically, they are not wrong. The CEO of an LSP is, of course, free to hire junior salespeople or simply do all the selling himself. Either way, though, the end result is an inexperienced and ineffective sales team. LSPs can survive a long time with an inexperienced sales team, but will continually struggle to grow in a meaningful way until they make the decision to invest fully in this area. Adding value through the sales core function. You may be wondering why we classify sales as a core function rather than a support activity. In any other industry, we would have the same feeling, as sales usually exist only to win new business. Yes, they increase revenue, but they don't particularly add value for the end customer. Once they have closed a deal, they turn everything over to the production teams and go on to find the next deal. Figure 22. Sales core function adds value to the customer through marketing, selling, and account management. This figure shows how at each stage value is added through marketing, selling, and account management, starting with marketing, which has education, webinars, speaking, blogs, lead generation, and networking, and selling, which has RFP responses, consulting and guidance, understanding, and defining solutions, and account management, which has business reviews, health checks, trust building, communication, and offsites. In the language services industry, however, sales cannot operate like this. When a deal is closed, there is still a continued need for sales. Why? Because the industry is incredibly complex and therefore not well understood by many end customers. Remember, LSBs, by definition, are not part of the industry. They come to LSPs when they need to purchase language services. Therefore, most LSBs are approaching the industry as total outsiders, and they need somebody to guide them through this process. Sales adds value through marketing, selling, and account management. Marketing begins before the client is even ready to buy language services. Once they are interested in purchasing language services, the selling activities begin. Once that customer is onboarded and rolling, the sales core function takes place through account management activities. As you can see, the sales core function never ends. It starts before the customer even signs a contract and continues, hopefully, indefinitely. Marketing. The overall sales process starts with marketing, which provides information to LSBs and potential LSBs, not just about a particular LSP, but about the industry as a whole. Take a look at any mature LSP's website, and you will see a vast library of learning materials aimed towards their customers. LSPs host webinars to educate their customers and potential customers about industry trends. They write blogs suggesting ways to approach key challenges faced by LSBs. Of course, this is marketing material, so the primary objective is to generate new leads for the LSP, but the value is added in the education they provide. LSPs also attend industry conferences and events, where they meet other LSPs as well as LSBs to discuss the language services industry. Sales and marketing professionals who attend these events are often keynote speakers or serve on panels well attended by people hungry for more information. They meet with potential clients to understand their needs and suggest possible courses of action to those who need guidance. Thus, the sales team has added value even before the customer ever sends a request for proposal or RFP, and regardless of whether or not they actually ever do business together. Selling. The selling role is what most people think of when they think of salespersons. The image of a seedy used car salesman comes to mind. Or perhaps people can't get that Glengarry Glen Ross out of their minds. If you're too young to get the reference, Google it. You won't be sorry. The reality is that sales is so much more than just closing the deal. Sales is working with a potential customer to understand their needs and then guide them through the complex world of the language services industry, where it can be intimidating to an outsider. Salespersons need to play the part of teacher, referee, coach, and motivational speaker. Being expert communicators, they are able to have a conversation with the client to understand what their core needs are, take these requirements to their production teams, usually the project manager, to find a solution, and then communicate this back to the client. Through this process, the customer is able to understand not only what the LSP is proposing, but also their own challenges in a completely new light. Account management. Once a potential customer becomes an actual customer, the sales core function takes the form of account management. Some LSPs assign this function to the project management team, while other LSPs have official account managers who are responsible for one or more clients. Of course, a key responsibility of these account managers is to develop and grow the business. In this regard, they operate largely under the same principles as the sales team that did the original selling. An additional responsibility of account managers is managing the customer relationship. They maintain good communication with the customers through regular check-ins, quarterly business reviews, or QBRs, and regular meetings. Building trust allows the LSP to make sure their clients remain happy and also provides a better understanding of the customer's needs. By understanding the customers better, LSPs are able to continuously identify new areas where they can add even more value. Now that we understand how the sales core function adds value through marketing, selling, and account management, we would like to have a deeper discussion around how LSPs approach sales. It is not our intention to write a comprehensive guide on how to do sales, though. In the following sections, we outline some key concepts that LSPs need to keep in mind to successfully add value and grow their business. Ways to increase business. It is ultimately the job of the sales core function to grow revenue for the business. This is such an important function that the salesperson typically works on commission, meaning that the amount of money he makes is directly tied to how much new revenue he is able to grow for the company. There are countless books written on the subject, and many of them will outline new and innovative strategies for exactly how to go about growing business. For the purposes of this book, though, we prefer to keep it simple. There are, at the most basic level, only 3 ways of growing business. You can increase the number of clients you have, increase the average size of sale per client, or increase the number of times a client returns to buy again. That's it. As with most simple concepts, the devil is in the details. What makes this more complicated is that in a typical LSP, these 3 ways of growing business are often pursued by entirely different team members. Marketing professionals focus on marketing and lead generation. Salespersons manage the selling process, and account management can be carried out by project managers, account managers, salespersons, or a combination of any of these. A coordinated sales strategy considers each of these 3 ways of growing business and makes sure that all responsible parties act in sync with each other to accomplish the common goal of increasing revenue for the company. Let's explore each of these functions in a little bit more detail below. Increasing the number of clients. When most people think of sales, they think of talking to prospective clients and convincing them to purchase your services. That is to say, they think of the selling process. This is perhaps the easiest and simplest way to quickly grow a business, but it will require investment into dedicated salespersons who are tasked with the responsibility of landing new clients. Though the salesperson is the CEO of his sales pipeline, the selling process frequently involves other departments as well. It is especially critical that salespersons be well supported to provide the expert consulting and education to add value to potential customers. Selling is a consultative role, and potential customers are looking for expertise. It is impossible for any single salesperson to know everything, so they need to be fully supported by project managers, engineers, solutions architects, and other team members. Selling in the language services industry is a team effort. What this means in practical terms is that there is no room for friction between the sales and production teams. They need to work together seamlessly. The LSPs that are able to close quality deals and have long-term relationships with their customers are the ones that have the best teamwork between sales and production. As we have said, the sales core function is the decentralized of the 3 core function, and it requires all responsible parties to be working together in harmony. When talking to a potential new customer, a seasoned salesperson does not wait long to invite members of the production team into the conversation. He knows that he will need to rely on their experience and input if they must address the customer's questions and concerns. Adding value through the selling process is a true team effort in the language services industry, and it is the salesperson's job as the CEO of his pipeline to assemble and lead the team towards the common goal of closing new business. Increasing the average size of sale per client. The simplest way of increasing the average size of sale per client is to raise prices, so that existing customers pay more for each project. If we do that, though, there is the risk that those clients may leave and go find a cheaper vendor. So we could also try to sell additional services to our existing customers. This is a sales strategy that is so pervasive in our everyday life, most of us don't even think of it as sales. If you've ever eaten fast food, you've surely been on the receiving end of the question, "So you have ordered the number 4. Would you like fries with that?" It is as simple as that, except it's more like, "So you've ordered the translations. Would you like in-country search engine optimization consulting with that?" As an example, let's look at a small SLSP in Montreal that provides French-Canadian translations. While not as greedy as their American neighbors, they are still capitalists and would like to make more money so they can buy more flannel hats or hockey pucks or whatever it is Canadians spend their money on. So, given that their customers are already buying French-Canadian translations from them, the LSP could try to see if they would also be interested in paying for testing or copywriting services. It is difficult to tell what their existing clients may want to buy from them, and surely many of the clients will not want to be interested in buying additional services at all. However, they will never find out if the sales core function is not carried out. Another way to upsell is to ask clients if they would like to upgrade existing services to premium level. Rather than, "Would you like fries with that?" you are asked, "Would you like to supersize that?" And this is where the LSP asks if its customers would be interested in adding an additional round of review by special copy editors, for an additional 20%, of course. In this example, it may not be the salesperson's job to get involved at all. Perhaps it is better that project managers have a discussion with the customers to understand where there may be additional opportunities. Since the project managers are already engaging with customers, presumably they have already built a certain degree of trust in their relationships. So, they are better suited to have this conversation than a salesperson the client has perhaps never met before. Because this is a job that is not usually in the hands of the salesperson, sadly it often gets overlooked. Salespersons are hungry, always looking for new business. Sometimes they are literally hungry if they are working on commission and therefore depending on their sales to put bread on the table. Project managers are focused on providing good services and are not always looking to add more to their already long list of responsibilities. Furthermore, remember that project managers are responsible for margin. This means they may be reluctant to add risky new services that may cause their margins to drop. It is therefore important to make sure that all client-facing team members within an LSP have a basic level of sales training. If not, you are surely leaving money on the table. The potential payoff for providing this training vastly outweighs the cost. Think about how many times you've paid for fries that you didn't even want. Now think about how little effort it took for that teenager to sell them to you. He just needed to be properly trained to ask the question. Customer retention. Another way to increase your revenue is to increase the number of times your customers return to buy from you, or what is called customer retention or loyalty. Most LSPs do not even think this is as part of sales, because it is pretty much a given that customers will return to purchase more services so long as they are kept happy. Because of this, there is usually very little involvement from the sales team in the process. It is typically a task given to account managers who add value by managing the customer relationship, making sure their needs are met, and that they are happy customers who will continue coming back. But just because this is typically performed by account managers and not salespersons, it doesn't mean that it is any less a part of the sales core function. We already looked at customer retention during our market influencer evaluation when we discussed the ease or cost of switching providers. As we stated back then, ensuring that your customers will stay with you for the longer term is a function of the total value you bring to the customer and the perceived cost of switching vendors, or stickiness. Value is created through your core competencies by providing excellent service to the customer. Perceived switching cost is increased as you become more and more embedded into the customer's process, whether that be through process knowledge, technology, or relationships. Although customer retention is an important part of the sales core function, it is not carried out by the sales team. This is because customers don't return to buy more because of the salesperson, but because of the value that they get from the project management and vendor management core functions. Full responsibility for customer retention lies on the shoulders of the production team. We have a table here with 2 columns. The first lists ways to increase value through good communication, on-time delivery, high quality, and good value-to-cost ratio. The second column lists ways to increase stickiness through integrated technology, specialized or trained resources, in-house process knowledge, and proprietary technology. Attacking on multiple fronts. We outlined the 3 basic ways that an LSP can grow business. This may seem like common sense, but we assure you that in this case at least, common sense isn't so common. Even when LSPs have a sales strategy, they do not think strategically about customer retention and upselling as a way to increase the company's growth. Rather, they focus their efforts on new client acquisition, and in many cases, do quite a poor job of it, because senior management either doesn't respect the sales core function, or they are trying to cut corners by hiring inexpensive salespersons. It is for this reason that we wanted to highlight each of these areas and outline the importance of having a strategy for each of them. Most LSPs believe that if they are going to grow by 30%, they need to win 30% more customers. So if your baseline is 100 clients who do 2 transactions per year at an average of $10,000 per transaction, your total revenue would look like this. 100 clients times $10,000 per transaction times 2 transactions per year equals $2 million in total revenue. If you were to increase the number of clients by 30%, your revenue would increase by 30% accordingly, of course. 130 clients times $10K per transaction times 2 transactions per year equals $2.6 million in revenue, which represents a 30% increase. This is certainly one way to accomplish the goal, but not necessarily the easiest or the smartest. Rather than giving your sales team the challenging task of 30% year-over-year growth, this responsibility can be spread out to various teams within the organization. Instead of aiming to increase the number of clients by 30%, you could increase the number of clients by 10%, increase the number of transactions per client by 10%, and increase the size of each sale by 10%. For example, next year your sales team wins 10% more clients, your account management team convinces your existing clients to buy 10% more services, and your project management team provides excellent service so that clients can return to buy 10% more in ongoing services. This would look something like this. 110 clients buy $11,000 per transaction, by 2.2 transactions per year equals $2.662 million in total revenue, which represents a 33% increase. As you can see, by spreading out the effort and responsibility for the sales function across the organization and focusing not just on new business, we are actually able to see a projected increase of 33% in revenue. This requires only a third of the selling effort and a 10% increase in the productivity of each function. Think big. Renato has worked for LSPs large and small. He has started his own translation companies, grown them, and sold them off so he can move on to the next challenge. He has been plugged into the language services industry for decades and has watched the rise of massive multiple language services providers within the industry. Tucker, likewise, has worked for small startups, medium-sized companies, and large companies. Both of us have certainly seen LSPs struggle with growth, and we have seen promising companies fail because they are not able to scale sustainably. This is because LSPs think small. Rather than embracing the global nature of the industry, LSPs all too often choose to place artificial limits on themselves by thinking of themselves as just another small company in a global industry. We've seen salespeople struggle and get frustrated because they are trying to grow the business but are fighting against the internal culture of their company. Sometimes an LSP grows their business but fails to grow their thinking, which is old-fashioned or perhaps overly conservative. Because of this, the responsibility to drive aggressive growth and visionary thinking often falls on the sales team. If you are reading this as a senior manager or owner of an LSP, please pay attention. It is the role of the management to set culture and to support the core functions. By creating a visionary and forward-thinking culture, you will be setting up your teams to add much more value. If you are reading this as a salesperson, then buckle up because you've got work to do. Historically, LSPs tend to be started by entrepreneurs that either came from linguistic or project management backgrounds. It is essential for founders and CEOs to grow out of the mindset of a linguist or a project manager and start thinking more strategically. One of the tools we have discussed is setting the company's vision through writing a vision statement for the company. A small LSP without a vision statement will all too often fall into a mindset that limits their potential. For example, below is something that we hear in the industry all too often when speaking with LSP sales teams. Quote, "We are a small Ukrainian translation agency," end quote. In 2013, Renato gave a talk at the first ever Ukrainian localization conference titled, "We are a small Ukrainian translation agency." That was the name of the talk. The talk was about how LSPs can be their own worst enemies by failing to embrace their global potential in the global language services industry. This is why the support activities of management and culture need to be aligned so as to support the sales core function to add value and grow the company. We talk about it here in the context of the sales core function because it is the sales team that is driving aggressive growth for an LSP. However, this discussion may be interesting to anybody in the language services industry, particularly CEOs or LSP owners looking to expand their business globally. Of course, you can replace the word Ukrainian with Polish, French, American, or Korean, just as how you can substitute the word translation with interpretation, staffing, or multimedia. The location and the type of work of the company doesn't matter so much, but the sentence structure and spirit remains the same. Let's look at how the following words in the statement limit your mindset and prevent you from aggressively closing new business and expanding into new markets. First, let's look at the word small. This word is worse than meaningless when describing an LSP. By describing your LSP as small, all you are doing is limiting yourself by creating a perception for your buyers and employees that you cannot scale to meet global demand. Size doesn't matter for LSPs. Size is information that is totally irrelevant. Think about it. Do you go to a bank because it is a small bank or a big bank? Do you go to a restaurant because it is a small restaurant or a big restaurant? What information does that add to the conversation, especially for an industry like ours with such low barriers to entry and growth? Furthermore, size is completely subjective. A new LSP with 10 employees may feel small when they compare themselves to a larger company with 100 employees, but that larger company with 100 employees certainly feels the same way when they look at a company with 1,000 employees. Thinking small is indicative of a twofold inferiority complex that is pervasive in the language services industry. Firstly, we industry insiders tend to misguidedly think that our industry is small and unimportant. Secondly, we think our individual companies are small within the context of the larger industry. This is utter nonsense. Forget the word small. Never say it. LSPs by nature are global companies that have the ability to scale very quickly compared to other industries. Small LSPs only win business from small customers, so you should never brand yourself as a small company. Size does not matter in this industry. You are not small, you are global. Secondly, we are going to look at the word Ukrainian, which describes the location of the headquarters. LSPs, as we said, are global companies. The location of their headquarters does not matter. Highlighting it only serves to limit your potential. Consider, for example, a Brazilian SLSP that provides Brazilian Portuguese translation services to MLSPs. They do pretty good business, perhaps, but by branding themselves as a Brazilian translation agency, they have effectively destroyed the sales team's ability to win new revenue by selling additional languages to new and existing clients. For instance, many of their customers could have been convinced to purchase Spanish translations from them as well. For the customers, it would be one less vendor to deal with. Remember that LSPs are global in nature, and that if you limit yourself to a specific country or language, you are limiting your ability to add value through the sales core function. The last word we are going to look at is the word agency. This word is frightfully pervasive in the language services industry and is used by LSBs and LSPs alike. The reason that we take umbrage with this word is because it is not accurately representing the value that an LSP brings to their customers. Agencies are middlemen. The word agency simply means an intermediary. For example, let's look at a real estate agency. What value do they bring to the product? They serve as intermediaries between the seller and the buyer. At the end of the day, you are still buying the same house. There is very little value being added in this process. For an LSP to brand themselves as an agency, they are effectively saying that they do not add any value to the process, which would be an absolute misrepresentation of the business. An LSP does so much more than just transfer files. Project managers create style guides and glossaries to ensure quality. Vendor managers create value through strategic vendor management. This is why LSPs are not agencies, but service providers, which is why we have been referring to them for over 100 pages as language services providers. Keeping these points in mind, let's look at the above statement and see how this can be improved. LSPs should never label themselves as small or limited to a specific region. They are global. An LSP is not an agency. They are a valuable services provider. LSPs facilitate global communication between the top companies in the world. They add value to their customers by using their expertise in global markets to lead them in their journey towards world dominance. Good salespersons already know that you should never let the details get in the way of an opportunity. If anything, good salespersons have a reputation for being a little too cocky. We are not implying that a salesperson should go out and lie to customers about the size or scope of their company. Certainly not. But you don't have to bend the truth to realize the power and potential of an LSP. This isn't snake oil that we are selling. It is the reality. In today's language services industry, there is no such thing as a small, local translation agency. We are all global services providers. So it is important to remember this and not let the industry's inferiority complex limit your growth. Talk about value, not price. We have discussed over and over again the fact that the language services industry is not about translations, but about adding value. LSPs do not simply provide translations like an agency would. They provide value-added services to their customers through the core functions. No matter what your role in the company, your job is to enhance the value of the company. If you speak this language, no matter who you are or what you are doing, then you are going to have a long and successful career in this industry. This is true for everybody from the entry-level translator to the CEO, but it is by far the most important to the salesperson. While the sales core function perhaps is not responsible for creating the same type of value as the project management core function or the vendor management core function, the salesperson has an even more challenging job. The salesperson's job is to communicate this value to potential customers in a way that value is understood and appreciated, and then hopefully leverage this understanding and appreciation into more business and increased revenue for the LSP. This is why it is absolutely essential for the salespersons to know exactly what it is they are selling and the value they bring to the table. Of course, this is true in any industry, but we would argue that it is even more critical when selling language services. Remember, this is an industry that is misunderstood at best and completely devalued at worst in the eyes of the customer. When a car salesman is talking to a customer, there is a baseline understanding. Everybody is aware of the various features available in a car and how these create value. The wheels go round and the engine goes vroom. Everybody is clear. When selling language services, the customer frequently is tragically underinformed about the services they are buying, and so it is up to the salesperson to guide them through this process. This takes the form of consulting services and information sharing. This is why so many marketing departments write dozens of blogs and host webinars to provide training to potential clients on the services they offer. By educating the client, they can both make the client more comfortable with the services they will be purchasing and also display the value that the LSP brings to the partnership. Sales can add value by educating the customer about the solution they are offering. More effective, perhaps, than trying to guide the customer towards a solution, though, is talking to them about their problem. Solutions can be complicated, and it is not really necessary that the customer understands exactly how the sausage is made. Once the client has a better understanding of their problem, they can be convinced to accept your offer to help them with it. This requires building trust with the client first. If the client is going to trust you to take care of their problem without understanding exactly how you plan to do this, they need to trust that you have the skills and experience to do this. For example, the doctor doesn't need to educate every single patient on the exact process he will be using during an amputation. The doctor only needs to convince the patient of two things: that the foot has to come off and that he is qualified to make this happen. Another way to keep the conversation focused on your value is to avoid talking about price. This can be tricky because many clients want to know the price first before they will even continue a conversation. This is the sign of a very immature buyer. The salesperson's challenge is to shift the conversation away from price and focus on the value that the LSP brings to the table. This value is communicated by speaking directly to the customer's needs, which is a two-way conversation. By having a conversation about the client's struggles, the salesperson is in a position to define a unique value proposition. Only once all parties fully understand the challenges faced and the proposed value-add solutions are you ready to discuss price. Ask, don't tell. Another reason that good salespersons don't talk about price is because it is much like putting the cart before the horse. Price cannot be discussed until the service is defined. The service cannot be defined until the customer's challenges are understood. These challenges cannot be understood until there is a conversation between the LSP and the customer. This conversation needs to be a discovery session where the LSP learns everything they can about the customer's challenges so they can best define how they are going to add value to the process. During this conversation, a wise salesperson will refrain from boasting about solutions. You may think this is only necessary when selling to large and complex end customers, and so only applies to MLSPs. This is far from the truth. The truth is that this is a necessary conversation regardless of where you find yourself in the supply chain. An SLSP that is selling translation services to an MMLSP may think that it is not necessary to ask questions and understand the challenges and concerns of their customer. They may think that the MMLSP is only interested in price. This may be true, or it may not. Mature vendor managers look for vendors based on their best value. As part of their evaluation, the client outlines what they are looking for in a vendor. For example, perhaps quality is prioritized higher than price, or timeliness is prioritized over experience. By asking questions to the MMLSP, the SLSP is able to understand how they will be evaluated as a vendor. This allows them to adapt their strategy accordingly in order to win even more business from them. By asking questions, you understand more about the maturity of your customer and how they view themselves. This is useful information for the salesperson as it gives him more insight into how he should approach each customer. When we discuss buyer maturity, we are essentially talking about where the client sits on the spectrum between complete naivety to in-depth experience in buying languages experience. Naive, immature customers will be uninformed about how LSPs add value and will need to be guided through the process. Experienced, mature customers will know what they are about, and so the conversation can be more strategic. It is important to understand the maturity of each customer in the language services industry because, unlike other industries, you cannot take for granted that the customer is well informed about what they are buying. It is also useful to understand where the client thinks they land on the maturity spectrum. We have dealt with many clients who thought they knew what language services was all about, but were actually either underinformed or entirely misinformed. These can be difficult customers to sell to because they are not interested in discussing value or entertaining vendor suggestions on how to add more value. They think they know everything already, and they just want to buy based on price. Likewise, there are many clients who are all too happy to admit that they are inexperienced when it comes to localization, and so can humbly approach the LSP and ask for expert advice. Customers are either mature or immature buyers of language services, but aren't always aware of their own maturity. Generally, clients fall into one of four categories as outlined below. Immature, but thinks they are mature. Downside: client is unteachable and may be resistant to introducing new improvements to their processes. Upside: client is usually vested in localization, even if they are not using mature processes. You can channel this enthusiasm. Mature and thinks they are mature. Downside: not as much room for creativity. Upside: consistency and efficiency. You can get right to business. Immature and doesn't think they are mature. Downside: it will take a long time to accomplish anything because you are essentially starting from scratch. Upside: all parties are teachable and eager to learn new things. And lastly, mature and doesn't think they are mature. Downside: constant struggle to keep up with changing expectations. Upside: challenging and exciting initiatives and always opportunities to build new things. Asking questions to discover more about the needs of the customer is the driving principle in different sales strategies. It is certainly not a novel idea that we came up with. The reason we discuss it here is because of the nature of the language services industry. As we have made clear, many clients are not at all sure what they need. They only know that they have some challenges and they have been tasked with solving them. This means that a customer or potential customer may sometimes think they want to buy one thing, but after you find out more about their challenges and pain points, you may discover that they actually need something else entirely. This is an area where sales can actively add value. By helping the customer identify problems and proposing solutions to those problems, the sales function adds value to the customer before the contract is ever even signed.